Okay, so this is going to be the build video for the Eachine Tyro99 5-inch drone build kit, and this kit, it doesn't come with any instructions, but this is not going to be too difficult to build, even if you're a first-time builder. I think for a first-time build, this is probably going to be one of the easier ones, because most of the stuff is just plug and play, and there's not a whole lot of soldering. I'll actually show you what actual points need to be soldered, but yeah, for a 5-inch drone build, this is probably one of the builds that's going to have the least amount of soldering. So if you're worried that doesn't come in instructions, just follow along with this video and you should be able to figure this out. I'll pretty much show you all the steps that you need to do to get this thing up and running and flying. But first, just wanted to show you all the parts here. It does come complete. You want to make sure that you have all the parts so you can build this. It's very unlikely that you'd be missing anything, but if you watch this video here, you'll see all the parts and you'll see if there's anything missing. I'll just cover some of the little minor stuff first. Obviously, you're gonna have to, you're gonna get some props, and they're gonna come with these bi-blade props. They might be different colors. These are the 5038. I don't know, it's some kind of clone or something. It's fairly stiff, and I think they went with a bi-blade just because it's going to be, I think, more efficient and probably going to get more flight time out of this. It is a lower kV motor that we got here. It's a Eachine branded Tyro99 2206 2150 kV, so it is rated up to 5S, and it's, pretty generic looking motor, pretty good air gap, nice magnets, smooth. The bearing seems smooth. The only downside to this motor is that the motor wire is covered in plastic. So when we get to the soldering part, I'll explain what we'll need to do there, but obviously we have to get the frame together first. You get two motors with the clockwise nuts, the silver nuts, and then you get two with the black counterclockwise nuts. And the way I'm going to be doing is with what's called reverse props, and those will be the motors will be probably opposite direction of most other people. I prefer the reverse props orientation, so we want to pay attention to that and the configuration later. And for beta flight, that's at the end of the video, so make sure that you get this configured properly so it'll fly properly. Now the carbon pieces here are pretty nice. You got these pretty nice 5mm arms. They're skinny though, so it's kind of a chopstick frame. 8.5mm wide. It looks like it is cut properly, and it's a nice cut. I don't see hardly any burring, but it's not chamfered, and there's a little bit of dust, but for the price, you can't really complain too much. And you only get 3 holes for the motors, and you get, I believe only 2 of these are going to be for the frame, one's going to be for the flight stack, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the build. You get a whole bunch of these zip ties, and I'm not sure if I'll be using all of these, but it's kind of nice to have some of these zip ties available. Put those to the side. You get this battery plate that protects the battery because it's a bottom-mounted battery frame. So you usually put this on the bottom of the battery, so it's like acts as a landing skid or landing, I guess, protection for the battery so you don't ding it. But this is optional to use. If you want to use it, you can use it. I'm probably not going to. The arms are going to be sandwiched between this bottom plate here and this little sandwich plate, and I'll show you how to put that together. Looks like it's going to be pretty easy. Got some press fit nuts here and probably some screws. That's the thing that we're going to have to sort out here. Is it does come with a whole bunch of screws of various sizes, so we're going to have to figure out what goes with what. And these are the carbon plates for the side that goes on the side of the aluminum cage. This gives it extra strength because this aluminum will bend. It is a little bit softer aluminum. It's 6065 aluminum, but that combined with the carbon side plates ought to keep this okay. The only one of the downsides of this cage is pretty tight, so there's not going to be a lot of room for extra stuff in here. But we should be able to get everything to fit. According to the pictures, it did look like everything fit fine. Now the thing that makes this an easy build is a stack, and you got 4-in-1 ESC, and you got a flight controller. So it's a Omnibus, sorry, it's a Maytech, I think, F4 flight controller. That's the target. And you can see all these little connectors here. We'll go over all those here in a second. But that's basically what makes this a very easy build, because it comes with all the connectors that you're going to need, and I'll go over these here in a second as well once we finish the parts overview. Going to need this heat shrink here. It's going to go over the arm and cover up the motor wire, hold it into place and protect it. Get an FPV camera, a connection here for the cable, and this, I'll show you how to mount that later. And just come with these small screws, so you're going to make sure you don't lose those. And then this is the FPV system. You're going to get your video transmitter, and then this little connector goes here. It's an MMCX adapter. This comes out of the little antenna adapter part right here that we're going to put onto the back of the frame, and then the antenna is going to connect up here. Okay, so just to go over the connectors that come with the kit, this is what actually makes everything go together. There's this one here that's all black wires, and this is going to go between the flight controller and the ESCs, and that's actually going to be this one up here. So the way this is oriented, this little arrow here is pointing forward, that's the front of the craft, and this little capacitor here is in the back, and this connector is just going to go in right here. And there's no way you can make a mistake. You can plug in this side or the other side, it doesn't matter. And they're keyed, so you can't plug in upside down, so don't worry about that. So just going to plug that in here like this, and then I'm going to plug this one to the top one over here. It's literally going to be that easy, like so. So that's good. Oh, I'm kind of falling out here. Okay, so now that's in, and you could probably tuck that in inside to the between the flight controller and the ESC if you want to. It's optional. And the nice thing about this flight controller, it's going to be hard to see, is if you don't want to use the connectors, you can use these solder points that are underneath here that are labeled. So you can see this says cam. There's 3 points there, power and for the camera. This connector is for the camera. It's a 3-pin connector, and it's going to be this one here. So you have 3 pins here, and then 3 go to the camera. And so the different sizes, so the ones that, this little smaller one is going to go to the camera, or sorry, this is going to go to the flight controller, which just goes right here, like so. I'll just plug in, and it's keyed so you can't get it wrong. And this other side goes to the camera, so this connector is a little bit different size, and then so that other smaller one won't fit into the camera, so this will go in here, like so. I'll just plug in. So later on, once we get the frame together, you know that this connector goes to the camera, and I'll show that again later, but I just want to show that this is very, very, very easy to build. Just plug that in like so. Move that to the side. We get this connector here, and you can see that they're keyed the same way. This is what, I guess they put a lot of thought into this. You can't make a mistake. It doesn't matter which side to use where. This goes to the video transmitter. So this one will plug into here, like so. And then the other side will go into the video transmitter. Over here you can kind of see on the other side of the board it says VTX right there. It's kind of hard to see the lighting, yeah, right there. So this one here is for the video transmitter, and then these are certain sizes, so you can't really mess it up. And then it only go in one way. So obviously going this way, you can't plug in it upside down. So you know that one will work for the video transmitter. So you can plug that in later. And then this last connector here is going to be for your receiver. It's a little 3-pin connector, and it has a little server lead on here. And it kind of gives a generic lead here because it kind of depends on what kind of receiver you're going to have. If you're going to have a FreeSky receiver, Spectrum receiver, or a FlySky receiver like an iBus receiver. So oftentimes you're going to probably have to cut this off and put on your own receiver. And most of you guys are probably going to fly FreeSky. And so in which case you're going to then cut this off and solder this onto your FreeSky receiver here. You know, basically yellow, red, and black, just like that. I believe this is defaulted for S-Bus, which is what FreeSky uses. By the way, this kit doesn't come with a receiver. You have to supply your own receiver. And the connector for the receiver is over here, I believe. Yeah, it's over here. So there's actually all these solder points underneath that you can't see. And I'll just put a picture up of the board underneath what it looks like. There's actually a picture of it on the product page. And so basically I saw something that said S-Bus there, and that looked like that would be for the receiver. And then you would just plug in this here like so. And obviously your receiver will be on the other end of this this little wire you soldered on. And here on the top side of the board, you're going to have to probably use these little bridge pads here for either S-Bus. So you bridge basically the middle one to the left one here for S-Bus, and then the middle one to the right one for I-Bus, DSM, which is Spectrum, or PPM. And then there's a bunch of other solder points in here. There's a S port for telemetry, an RSSI pad. You have a bunch of other things here like extra UARTs. So this board actually has 5 UARTs, which is pretty amazing for such a budget build. You got buzzer, LED over here, digital to analog converter right there. It's usually for like a current sensor. You got more UARTs over here, RX3, TX3. There's a current sensor pad there. There's another motor pad here, and then you got some more UARTs here, RX4, TX4, RX1, TX1. So yeah, this is pretty amazing that this board comes with all this stuff. It looks a little sparse, but there's actually extra solder pads all over the place for the stuff that you're not, extra stuff that you might want to connect later that don't use the connectors that come with the kit. Okay, so got all the connectors out of the way. So plugging those in obviously will be pretty easy later. And then the thing one of the things you have to solder on is the battery lead. So that didn't come soldered on. They did solder on the capacitor for you. You can see here that little capacitor wires went through these through holes here, and then they soldered it on top here. And the negative and positive is marked. So the negative's here, positive is there. So probably easy just to push these through like this. You can see the wires, the little ends are sticking up, and that's probably what I'm going to do. And then just push the wires through up like that, and then I'll just solder the battery lead right to here and here on top. So that shouldn't be that hard to do. And then the only other soldering you have to do is obviously solder on your motor wires right here. That's so motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4, and I think that's it for soldering. So that would be 14 points of soldering, which is, I think, you're probably not going to find another kit that's going to have that little amount of soldering. So I think the first thing we're going to do here is, now that I got all the sort of an overview of all the connections of everything, where everything goes, let's put the frame together, and then we'll figure out how to actually mount the motors and stuff. It's a little, I have to do a little bit of planning here, and I'll kind of cover some of that. Okay, so this next part's going to be a little bit tricky because you got to kind of figure out where all the screws go, and took everything out of the bag, which you do is what I did here is organize them by size. So I put all the little nylon standoffs and nuts here off to the side. I don't think we're going to be using any of these because the stack here is already pre-built and it already has the nylon standoffs on there. So pretty sure this is not going to be used for anything. Basically the frame, the way it's going to go together is you're going to have the arm go in between this. This is going to be like this is going to be the top plate. It's going to go like this, and I don't think there's any particular right or wrong way. I'll have to double check that. I think it's like this. It should be like that. Should be fine. There's 3 holes here, and then you want to use this plate here. And you're going to basically have one long screw that goes through the bottom, and it goes through the arm and into this press fit nut here. And then there's going to be another screw that's going to go into a nut, this nut right here. It's going to go there. And those 2 are going to basically hold the arm to the body. And then this third hole here is going to be for the stack, and it's going to be for another one of these long screws. So I'm pretty sure there's 5 of these really long screws here. Then there's the second 5 of these second longest screws. I think the second longest screws are going to go into the center part here, and so you can kind of get an idea by sort of, okay, take a screw here, and we're going to go through the bottom. It's going to be a little trial and error here because there's nothing's labeled, so I'm going to give this a try and see if this fits. So this goes to the bottom plate like this, and then this goes to the arm, and then you can see here that's the longest, or it's the second longest screw here. And it's probably going to be a little bit too long because you don't want that sticking into the flight stack. So try the other screw. And you can see here that this screw is going to be the one you're going to want to use. So you're going to use 4 of these to hold the arm in at that point. And then the second longest screw is probably going to go on the other side over here. And I think the longest screw is going to go in the middle for the stack. So I'm going to give that a try. And that's pretty much how the frame goes together. Now, the rest of these smaller screws here, ones we want to figure out is are going to be for the motors. You want to again grab one of the arms here. I think this one here is going to be for the motors here. You want to just basically put it through the arm like so. You can see there's about that much thread. I think it's about 2-3 millimeters, and that should be enough. If you just kind of test things out here, you can see that when you actually go mount the motor, that screw should work. And it turns out that I think there's 16 of these, even though you only need 12 because we're only using 3 screws. So you happen to have, I think you'll have some spare screws I think left over. So I think these are for the arms, and then you got this size over here. So it's not the shortest one. So these over here are the shortest ones. You can see the size here. I think these are going to go into the side plates like this, and then into the aluminum side plates like this. That holds the carbon side plates to aluminum side plates like that. There's enough thread there. That should go in just fine. And then these super short screws are going to be for these little thinner carbon plates. And then this is like one of those pieces that goes on the top here of this aluminum side plate. It's going to go in like here. You can see that should be enough thread to go into that hole right there. So in the bag there were these like little self-tapping screws that I don't think are going to be used for anything, but if they are, I'll let you know. There's a separate bag of 3 screws that look like this, a little bit longer thread. This is for the camera, and actually it's 30. I checked that, and this actually works for the camera. You have 1 spare, and you need this one, little long one, because it's going to go through this carbon side plate on this hole right there. Okay, so I got 3 of the arms attached right now with the press fit nut and the nut on the outside here, and you got 2 different screw sizes. The one that's going to go into the press fit nut is the shorter of the 2. So this what they look like. This shorter one goes into the center one, and this one goes on the outside with the lock nut. And something weird that I found out here is the longest screw here has a different sized hex driver hole. So I don't know what size that is. I don't have that driver. Yeah, it's not a 2 millimeter. It's not a 1.5. So I think it's something in between. So this is the one that goes, and it's going to go into the center here, or in the middle part. This hole right here. It's going to go right there, and that's going to where the stack is going to go. But I have no way of tightening it down, so I'm not going to use these. So you might have to, well, I'm going to use something else. So you're going to have to find some kind of a screw that will go into this middle spot here, or you're going to have to find a driver for this. I just happen to not have the size of driver for this hex driver, so I'm just going to use a different screw. That I have a bunch of M3 screws lying around. And then very important here, make sure you put your heat shrink on the arm before you attach the arm. Otherwise you won't be able to get this on because it's too wide here for the heat shrink, and you're going to run the motor wires underneath later on in the build. And then the way I have my arm set up is there's 1 screw hole that's missing. I'm putting that on the inside, not on the outside. And the product page is on I think it's on this side over here, but I'm going to put it on this side over here. This should be alright. I just wanted basically a screw hole in the back and the front, because I think that's where most of the stress is going to be versus side to side. So I'm okay with a hole missing on this side versus the back side there. So that's why I did that way. And when you put this together, you want to keep everything kind of loose. Don't tighten it down, otherwise it's going to be impossible to get the screws in. And just put the last set of screws in. Now, getting this frame together is a little bit fiddly. And then the longer screw on the outside with the lock nut. So once you get all 4 arms in, you can go ahead and then tighten down all the screws. I'm going to go and do the ones for the press fit nuts first on the center. You probably want to go around and then retighten everything, and then of course you're going to need something to grab onto the lock nut over here on the other side. And then tighten it down. Okay, so once you have the arms attached to the bottom plate and the sandwich plate, it should look like this. You still have the holes for the stack, and these holes here for the side plates, or the cage. And then this basically should be flush here. I think in the product page they're using the longer screw here on this outside part, the one where I don't have the hex, but the hex key for. But I decided I'm going to make this one flush here and then this one flush here. So that's what you want to go for. And it should look like that. That's the reason you want this to be flush, especially in the center. When you put the stack on here, you need room there for the battery strap to go through. The battery strap is going to go through this section right there. Okay, so for the side plate for the cage, you put 3 screws here. It's going to be this size here, and just for reference, it's going to be like that. And then this hole here has no thread, and this is for this piece right here. And the thread's over here. I'm going to stick this over here. And you're going to use a longer screw. It's going to go through. And we're going to screw that into this piece here. This is for the SMA adapter. And then to put the 2 side pieces together, we're going to use these little top plate here. It only goes in one way, like so. Actually, it's like this. There's only a certain way this will go. Yeah, so it goes like this. And then you're going to use these really short screws. And that's going to hold that in place right here. And we got this little tiny piece right here. It's going to go right here. So most of you guys will probably use this piece, and that's going to hold that part together there. Optionally, there's a GoPro mount that you can print out, 3D GoPro mount that you can screw in here if you want. I may show you that in a later video. Okay, so once you have the cage all together, it should look like this. You have the 3 shorter screws that go here, here, and here, and then the longer screw goes into this little SMA adapter there, and then the shorter screws go into these support plates here, and that should put the cage together. And then you're going to need some screws here to mount this to the frame like this. So it's going to go, have some screws that are going to go in here. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be these here. Yeah, so those screws ought to have enough thread to go into the cage to hold the cage on. Okay, so I got the flight stack mounted to the frame, and I just found some nylon screws I had lying around that wasn't using for anything else. They just had to be long enough to go through all 3 of the plates, and then just a little bit extra to go into the nylon stand up there, and obviously have that space there for your battery strap. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I think what was weird is that 2 of the screws had the right hex driver like thing key, but the other two were too small, so it was kind of weird. So not a big deal. I had extra screws around, but if you don't have any extra screws, that might put you into a bind. I think I just had 2 defective screws. I think that's probably just a one-off. I'm pretty sure that everyone will get correct screws. That's pretty rare. Now, once you get your flight stack mounted, you're gonna plug in your plugs here. So basically, well, you orient yourself here. The arrow pointing forward here. The one going out the right is for the video transmitter. The one going out the front here, this one's going to go to the camera. That goes in right there. And then I just plugged in my wiring limb for the ESC to the flight controller here. And I just tucked the wires back like so. And then the one back here is the one for the receiver. And I just cut off the servo end and then soldered that onto my XM Plus receiver like this. And then one more thing you need to do here is bridge these pads. So there's 3 solder pads here, and you want to bridge the left one to the center for S-Bus. And then if you want iBus or Spectrum or PPM, you're going to bridge the right one to the center instead. And it's going to be a UART2. So if you don't do that, then the receiver won't work. So that's another little solder thing you have to do here. And then I soldered on my battery lead. I just ran the wires up to the hole like I showed earlier, and then just ran some solder over the top. It was pretty easy to do. Sometimes these battery leads can be kind of difficult, but that was not too hard to do. So that's pretty much it in terms of the connections here. Obviously we still have to solder the motors first, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach the camera on the inside here, and we'll just put the cage on top. I'm going to run the video transmitter wire up through the top here, because the video transmitter is going to go up on top here, and we're going to use those zip ties to zip tie the video transmitter up to the top. And then we're going to run the video transmitter cable, plug that in, and then run this here through the hole here, and that's going to be for the antenna. But yeah, it's shouldn't be too hard to do. Of course, this the front's over here, this is the back, and just got to make sure that all your wires are kind of tucked away. Yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult. So this is going to be the camera here. I'll run the video transmitter wire up to the top there, and then should be enough space in there for the receiver. I'll just use a little sticky foam and stick the receiver on top of the flight controller like that, and then run the wires out probably along the arms and have the antennas on the arms. That's what usually work for these kind of frames. Okay, so I added the camera and the video transmitter and the SMA adapter to the cage. Tip here for you guys: you want to attach the camera to one side of the cage first, and then attach these centerpieces here, this little brace here, this brace here, before you attach the other side here, because if you build the cage first like I did, you're not going to get the camera in there. It's a very, very tight fit for the camera. Yeah, there's not much adjustment for angle there, and the lens of course is sticking out, so yeah, I'm kind of wondering if perhaps some third-party cages might come out for this, maybe a TPU print or something like that. I mean, all you need to do is attach 4 screws here. So I'm thinking that I wouldn't be surprised if someone did that at some point in the future, because this cage is too small. It's going to be just enough for that stack in there, and you have to put the video transmitter on top. And on the product page, they got the video transmitter flipped over, but you can't have it that way because you need access to the button, because there's no smart audio on this one. And of course, with no smart audio, you need to know what channel you're on, so you're going to have to look at the LED. So having it flipped upside down isn't very useful. But yeah, that's how I put it together. It's a pretty tight fit. Just use one zip tie to put it on top. And then now I'm just going to go ahead and attach it to the frame with the 4 screws on the bottom. I'm just going to run my wires through the appropriate places. So, and of course I want to make sure I attach the camera before I screw this down. Okay, so here's what it looks like with the cage on, and just the 4 screws here on the bottom, 2 here and 2 on the other side. And you can see I'm just running my receiver antenna up through the front here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this antenna, one of the antennas, on each arm like so, using some zip ties. I'm going to heat shrink those later. I'll leave those out for now. At this point, the build's pretty much done. I just did the soldering for the receiver and the battery lead. Now we got to do the soldering for the motors. So we got to attach the motors on here. I'm going to run the wires under the heat shrink here. We're going to heat shrink that down at the very end. And in the product page, the way it looks like they run the wires, they're kind of long. See the action here. It looks like they have the wires going through this little hole right here, and then up and then around this standoff here. And then they have the wires soldered to the motor tabs here from the inside, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to cut these wires either, because I know that these plastic wires here are covering up just bare copper wire, and you're going to have to, if you cut these short, then you have to scrape the, and you're probably going to, you can probably see that a little bit there, a little bit of copper is exposed. You have to scrape the copper, and then, because it's not going to take the solder. So yeah, it's probably just better just to leave it the length that it is here, and I'll probably just run the wires, these little ends of the wires here, up through the holes underneath. So we'll have the wires come through the heat shrink, and then run them underneath, and have some excess wire here just hanging by the battery strap. And just as long as it's out of the way of the props, it should be fine. So that's probably what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to use these screws here to secure the motors to the arms. And that's probably going to be the most of the build being done at that point. Just got to attach the antenna, and then I'll do the heat shrink to the receiver wire, and then we got to just turn it on and make sure that everything doesn't blow up. And so go ahead and solder up the wires and hook them up, and I'll show you what that looks like after that. Okay, so I have the motors attached and ran the motor wires to the heat shrink. And I kind of did a little zigzag here, up and then down and then under, and I ran the ends of the, see here, I didn't cut these off. I cut these off, but I didn't cut these off. I forgot to do that. I ran the ends of the motor wire up through the through hole underneath, and then I just soldered up on top here, and that should hold it up just fine. It's not pretty. Just dealing with this kind of plastic wire is really difficult because it's just very rigid. And I just wanted to get out of the way. The props should be okay if you do it this way. I really wish that they would have these motors with silicone wire. Hopefully in a later revision they'll change that, because this is very difficult to deal with. I know there's not that much soldering, but there's 12 solder points here for each of or 3 for each motor, and this is having the plastic wires does not make it easy. So I kind of wish they would switch that up. If they switched this to silicone, this would be a lot easier build. Dealing with this was kind of a hassle. Also, getting the wires to the heat shrink was also kind of a hassle. So yeah, this would be I think it's kind of optional. I just put it on there because it came with the kit, and that's the way the kit was meant to be built, according to the picture and the product page. But of course, you don't have to do that. You can just solder it on and use some zip ties or some cloth tape, something like that. I just happened to use this because it was included. I just wanted to make it as close as possible to the way it was pictured. And then the way I have my motors here, I put the silver nuts, or the clockwise nuts, on so if we turn this around here, we have the motor 1 over here, motor 2 over there, 3 here, and 4 there. I'll have since I'm doing the reversed motor rotation, I'm putting my silver nuts on 1 and 4, the blacks on 2 and 3. Now if you do the normal way, you're going to want to reverse this, put the blacks on 1 and 4 and the silver ones on 2 and 3. But since I'm doing reversed, I'm having the motors go in this direction like this. This is the way that you should put the motors on if you want to do reverse props. If you want to do normal props, then it's going to be the opposite of this, so just keep that in mind. And you guys are probably wondering what it looks like underneath with the wiring like that, and there's still space there for the battery strap. And it doesn't look like this wire won't get snagged up anywhere, hopefully. But yeah, there's enough space there for the battery strap to go through. And then I'm probably going to put some sort of battery pad on the bottom here. Obviously, you don't want the screws going into the battery, so I'll probably use some silicone or something like that. And then run the battery strap, and then you just have the battery on the bottom. And then, of course, I want to attach the FP or the video transmitter antenna here. And you notice that it's kind of on the short side here. Not that much thread, so I think I'm going to remove this this nut here and just screw down the antenna all the way and hold that in place. Just to make sure that you have contact inside the antenna. Otherwise, if it's not all the way screwed in and there's some good contact there, you're not going to get good video reception at all. So I'm probably just going to remove that nut and then screw this all the way down and just use the antenna to hold the adapter in place. Okay, so I think that ought to do it for the build. Really, the last thing I need to do is just secure my receiver antenna, which I'm just going to put some zip ties here after I do the heat shrink. But I'm going to, before I heat shrink this down and put the zip ties on here on the arms for the receiver antenna. I'm going to just do a final configuration, the Betaflight configuration, and make sure that the motor directions and all that are working correctly. Probably make sure that the EC firmware is up to date as well. That's going to be in a separate video, so this is going to conclude the build video, and I'll have a separate video on the software setup in terms of the flashing or anything like that. I don't think you need to flash the flight controller. If I did check it, it did come with the latest Betaflight 350. Just going to make sure that it has the latest ESC software, and if it does, then all you got to do at that point is check motor directions and stuff like that, and then I'll get into the basically Betaflight configuration and PID tuning, that kind of thing, in the next video. So it'll be that one, and then after that I'll have a flight demo. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful in terms of getting your Tyro99 built. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.